English translation 8. 172nd contact. Monday, 16th December 2023. 151 HRs.
Greetings, Edward. Quetzal told you I was coming. I am delighted to see you again after a long absence. We will also have a lot to talk about.
That is entirely my pleasure, so likewise. But welcome to my den and greetings to you as well. But I am wondering what you were able to do about my computer. It deleted the word for me. If possible, even 2 or 3. If I also only wanted to correct 1 letter, which is why I had to hire Michael to correct the last contact report, because it worked perfectly for him. But when I wanted to continue working, it happened again that the word to be corrected, or even 2 or 3, were deleted. As Quetzal told me, this led me to ask Piero if he could get me a new computer.
That is not necessary, because at least we were able to undo this intervention on your writing device. Unfortunately, we have not yet been able to overcome the energy generated by the religious faith of around 9 billion of Earth's humanity. We have carried out very precise investigations in all known earthly sciences of all categories, but we have not found any findings or even indications that it is known in any science that thoughts generate strong swinging waves of energy that are then maintained for many thousands of years. This, as apparently there is also no knowledge that these swinging waves actually exist on a basis of pure energy, which have an adversarial force. This energy and power, however, are constantly reinforced by new, similarly orientated swinging waves from many Earth humans, so that over the course of many millennia, an immeasurable energy power has been formed, which has been able to unfold into self-activity and cast a spell over Earth's humanity. These are delusional energies of religious belief, which are able to form themselves independently through their great power and are directed against every form of truth and reality. In this respect, they have become attacking and even dangerous and are increasingly displaying a wise malignancy. We realized this a very long time ago, but since then, these energies and their power have expanded and intensified to such an extent that they have become truly dangerous and malignant and interfere with the thoughts of Earth's humanity. Consequently, nothing can counteract this kind of self-acting increase in development as a result of the ever-increasing energy and its power through the continuing religious delusion of Earth's humanity, except the clear and absolutely incorruptible mind. However, only a small number of Earth's humanity possesses this, as we have analyzed, which means that only a small minority is actually free from delusion. Only this small number can protect themselves from being influenced by a religiously based delusional belief because their absolutely clear and free mind does not allow for a completely confused and wrong way of thinking. However, it is doubtful that my explanation can be understood by the earthly sciences of the relevant categories, that is to say, the scientists who practice them, and that they can also grasp the whole thing. This is firstly because they lack the necessary intelligentum, secondly because their intellect is unable to grasp the truth, and thirdly because their narrow-mindedness, as we have recognized, does not allow this due to their desire to know better. In addition, we have discovered that so far, only very inadequate apparatus and instruments exist with regard to the perception of energy, power and recording of thought activity, as a result of which the thought energy of the Earth's humanity brain cannot be determined in the form in which it is truthfully given, which combines with similar energy of the mass of humanity and is self-acting. Consequently, they also do not understand and cannot comprehend that the swinging waves of the delusional thoughts of Earth's humanity, with their tremendous energy and power, determine about 87% of all evil and negativity on Earth, and that Earth humans trigger this and make it a reality through their confused thoughts and their energy and power. Through the various and numerous types of religious delusions, there has long been a negative intervention in the minds of Earth's humanity, which inevitably results in an increase in religious belief, and this becomes more and more widespread. This gives rise to evil thoughts of aversion and enmity, such as even malicious thoughts of hatred as well as thoughts of revenge, etc., which not only proliferate very widely to evil discord and to extremely many acts of violence and to degenerating killing instincts as well as to war, but also lead to a religious fanaticism of faith, from which unbridled hatred arises in many different and deviant ways, especially against Earth's humanity who cultivate a different faith, which even affects whole peoples. This also refers to the fact that this energy, which emerges from the swinging waves of Earth's humanity's religious beliefs, becomes dangerous for persons who endeavor to name the religious delusion as such.
I already know that since Svath enlightened me on this. But now I want to know something. The fact that this religious energy is so capable of interfering with my work that it is even able to manipulate my computer in such a way that extremely often numbers, characters, and wrong letters appear in my writing, which I have to laboriously correct out, or that sentences or whole sections simply disappear in the stick when I am making it for Bernadette, I find that really quite something. And various members who have seen it happen themselves can testify that it really does happen. But when they write on my computer, everything works perfectly. So up to now, everything has only been directed at me. But recently, Bernadette has also started complaining because strange things are happening to her too. What is more, I have been struggling with this for 2 days now, trying to figure out the origin, the whole why, how, and purpose of it all. It is a mystery to me that I simply cannot fathom. This, although I isolate myself and endeavor, I will tell you the following, but I wanted to keep all this to myself and not talk about it. Which is why I also do not say what I also did not want to. Because I did not want to create a burden and not.
I understand that, and it is very good, because that is how you received. Very good, and I think you have acted very wisely with your silence. On the whole, however, you can be aware and certain that your was triggered by the energy we discussed, whereby the purpose, at least this is how I understand the matter and the reason for it according to our research and findings, is to create evil discord and thereby break everything apart and destroy it. This corresponds exactly to what we were able to fathom and what I explained to you. But
Sure, I will put dots there and not openly talk about it. The important thing for me is that I now know that everything really does come from outside, that is to say, came from outside, and I can be absolutely sure that nothing was based on my subconscious, as was assumed. The thinking is just different from mine, as I learnt it from Svath and have done all my life, and it is completely foreign to human beings on Earth, and they do not understand it. That is why it also seems completely abnormal or so to them when a complete blockade is put up against everything and anything from the outside and no influences are allowed in. This then, precisely because it is unknown to human beings, appears like a col d'air, as we say, which in reality it is not, but just a blockade to the outside and against any influence that would disturb the plowing through.
I understand that.
Good. Thinking and thinking is two different things. And while we are at it, you mentioned believing thinking earlier, but in reality it does not correspond to controlled thinking, but to a belief, and therefore to an unreality. I've had the term illusory thinking for this since the 1940s, but I only dug it up and used it again some time ago, because the last time I actually used it, when I think about it, was probably in the 1950s. In the 1940s, I still used it all pot when I was talking to Svath.
What does that mean?
What do you not understand?
That word you just said, all pot. I do not understand that.
That is Swiss German and actually means often or always, etc. However, when I speak German with you, because you do not speak Schweizerdeutsch well, it is just my habit that Swiss German words sometimes come in between, such as Schluffi, which you can translate as Schlüpfriger or Schlüpfriger human beings, but which also refers to a piece of clothing that can be slipped into. Schluffihund, on the other hand, is a vicious insult.
I find the word schluffy kind of humorous.
That may be so, But you mustn't confuse the word with schluffig, which in fact means something like bindigboden, or just silty soil.
I am not familiar with that. What is it?
I will have to dig something out of the nature box and explain it to you as follows. Silty soil is actually a healthy, normal soil that retains water well, and is therefore also very fertile. If I remember correctly, silty soil, that is to say silty material, actually consists of soft material that is fine as dust, and consists of loamy sand and very fine, velvety, floury sediment. However, earthlings do not usually think about this at all, just as they do not care about the soil as a whole, even though it is so important for them to be able to eat and live. Without the earth, that is to say the diverse soil and humus, the nutrient-rich soil that contains many nutrients created by all the dead organic matter, neither human beings nor anything else living could exist. Our main soils on Earth are loam, sand, silt and clay, whereby the main soil, saturated with humus, is the one used by human beings for all kinds of vegetables, etc., for cabbages, berry bushes, cucumbers, roses, and also fruit trees. Because as a natural soil, it is basically very fertile and suitable for many plant genera and species. However, the earthlings apparently understand little about this, because they perversely treat it with artificial fertilizer, and thus also the plants that they sow, plant and grow in it. But they apparently do not realize that they are leaching the soil and making it more and more infertile, and destroying it. What I have to say about the Allpot is the following. As I said, Swiss-German words sometimes break through in the heat of the battle of words, such as Bunzli, which you take to mean Spießbürger, Tubel as dumbling or dummkopf, Galuri, for example, as a fool, Tschumpel, on the other hand, as a simple, gullible human being who allows himself to be taken for a ride, or the Webstubler, who is regarded as a human being with a somewhat limited intellect, although the term actually comes from Basil Tuch. But the origin of the word Allpot comes from something completely different, namely from Angebot and Gebot, which used to be written as Angebot and Gebot, and thus with two T's as bot, which is still common today, especially in central Switzerland, where das Bot is still used today. The all can be understood as alles or immer, etc. Gebot, in turn, was also a Aufgebot, for example, for military service, as well as a Vorladung, etc. This is actually, in a very wise way, what I am familiar with in terms of the language of Switzerland and its expressions, but unfortunately much is disappearing more and more from the vocabulary of human beings today, because expressions from the inadequate language of English in particular are being used, thereby promoting the hegemonic mania of America, which wants to bring the whole world under its rule and subjugate it.
I am aware of this, but in doing so, it is impossible to understand how blind-sighted the upper leaders and peoples of the global states are who do not recognize this and hope America and let it have its way. This proves unequivocally that a very large part of the human overpopulation is still very far from having a valuable mind and clear reason. As a result, it has become erroneous to say that Earth's humanity has been bred beyond all reasonable measure. There is no other way to describe this incomprehensible nonsense against all common sense and clear reason. For the most part, this has caused irreversible damage to the planet itself as a result of its excessive exploitation of resources and also the destruction and extinction of millions of life forms of all genera and species. This includes many large, small, and very small life forms that move independently, as well as millions of very small, small, and large plants of all genera and species. This is the irresponsible aspect of this definition, as well as the irresponsible development of uncontrolled scientific and chemical achievements, and also of futuristic technology, which Earth's humanity indulges in without restraint or control. Consequently, it is inevitable that much harm has already been done as a result of the failure to control all these innovations, as will also continue to happen and will inevitably happen, as is irrevocably certain. Everything will result in destruction, annihilation and extinction, together with warfare, many and many kinds of deaths, whereby the sciences and the arrogance, as well as the megalomania of Earth's humanity, will also contribute a great deal to this. Misery, hardship, and destruction, as well as the climate and atmospheric pollution, will bring unimagined catastrophes that Earth's humanity will no longer be able to counter effectively. And,
You can save yourself further, Arleon, because the extent of Earthlings' illegal mess is very great. I know that, but few human beings care. This being shown in particular by how agriculture and intensive fattening operators, as well as the economy in general, are doing immense damage to the environment. In the forests, the egregious damage caused mainly by ammonia emissions has been so high for many years that trees of all species, as well as forest plants, are also suffering. However, the full extent of the destruction caused by ammonia also affects bodies of water, from individual rivulets to streams, rivers, and lakes, and also the oceans worldwide. The measures against the catastrophic pollution are neither recognized and implemented by human beings, nor by the political loudmouths in the way that would be effectively necessary. Namely, first and foremost, the most important thing is to drastically reduce overpopulation. This is the main reason for all the destruction, annihilation and extinction of fauna and flora, which affects around 60,000 genera and species every year, which simply disappear forever and ever from all areas of life on Earth. Hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money have already been invested in environmental protection, but without solving the problems that have arisen, because if you take a closer look, those responsible have acted like gobshites, that is to say, snotty brats, and senselessly squandered the money they took from taxpayers. And the imbecile rulers are also acting in the same way now, completely headless and with idiotic measures that are tantamount to terror and do nothing to bring about any improvement. This is because they do not realize that the only true and only solution is a controlled global stop to births, and that this should be implemented. But the fact that this should be done is also not understood by those who, just for the sake of the money they receive from millionaires, demonstrate and cling to the streets. The consequences of this senseless behavior are borne by no one other than nature, its forests, and the entire flora and fauna. All of the world's ice glaciers, the Antarctic and the Arctic, are melting. The atmosphere is also becoming increasingly poisoned. The climate has changed for the worse and is now causing natural disasters, landslides and flooding as a result of tremendous rainfall. Air pollution, as well as environmental pollution and all the destruction, annihilation and extinction are getting worse and also more catastrophic, because the unreasonable and unstoppable, constantly growing and irresponsibly increasing overpopulation continues to grow faster and faster and unstoppably, inevitably creating more and more pollution and environmental destruction, and causing the extinction of fauna and flora. All ecosystems are being destroyed and otherwise impaired in their natural course to such an extent that they cannot regenerate. Overpopulation is to be stopped and drastically reduced to only 500 million through a worldwide official decree of a worldwide and controlled birth stop, as adopted in America by, and recorded in the Georgia Guidestone, but blown up and destroyed by order and as a result of the fanatical faith of so that reality and its truth regarding the lies and deception of religious faith cannot penetrate. Not only the natural food crops are maltreated with chemical pesticides and all kinds of poisons, because everything in nature is poisoned, destroyed, annihilated, and eradicated. But that is not enough. Manure from agriculture and pig fatteners is also spread over and over again in the little bit of nature that is still free and has become very barren, as it also ends up in the fields where all kinds of vegetables and herbs, various types of grain, maize, peas, and sugar beet, fodder beet, and other beets of all kinds, etc. grow, which are also forced to grow with artificial fertilizers in addition to the manure. In agricultural areas with meadows, fields, and arable land where intensive farming and pig fattening is practiced, the smell of the chemical slurry additives is often foul, often blasphemously stinking, which we notice when we drive past farms. The phosphorus is also very worrying. However, as it dissolves in the soil as a slurry nutrient through the rain and ends up in the water of streams, lakes, rivers, and ultimately in the oceans, causing an unparalleled growth of algae in all bodies of water. However, the algae die quickly and are broken down by bacteria. This process requires a lot of oxygen. Many fish and other large parts of various aquatic organisms lose their habitat as a result or fall victim to extinction. However, if we take a closer look and think about it, we realize that, in addition to agriculture and pig fattening, a wide range of industries, factories, corporations, workshops, craftsmen, etc., also illegally discharge wastewater, some of it very toxic, into public land and waters. This is in contrast to other industries, which are required by law to officially dispose of all their waste or liquid hazardous waste or toxins, etc., in sewage treatment plants, where they can also only be cleaned to a certain extent and then returned to the normal cycle. On top of all this, however, there are also households that create an enormous amount of waste and also flush large quantities of chemical substances into the wastewater, namely shower and bath products, soaps, dishwashing detergents, clothes detergents, and other detergents of all kinds, such as for cars, windows, motorbikes, toys and tools, etc. There are also soil cleaning agents and many other products that chemically pollute water bodies, cause algae growth, and kill or even exterminate aquatic and terrestrial organisms. There are also countless individual human beings who thoughtlessly, senselessly, and irresponsibly simply dispose of their rubbish in the great outdoors, just as others carelessly throw away plastic packaging, plastic goods, paper packaging, or simply paper and many other things that are useless to them. This is how environmental pollution is carelessly and unscrupulously and criminally practiced, whereby the world, its nature, fauna, and flora are impaired in their existence and life, destroyed, annihilated, and wiped out. So-called environmentalists demonstrate violently, but only allegedly, against this, but in order to do good, on the contrary, only immense damage is done, for example by idiotically smearing or spraying paint on walls, buildings, monuments, and posters or other human achievements, but also stupidly and erroneously erecting roadblocks and impairing road traffic and bringing it to a standstill. For example, the so-called Last Generation was idiotically founded in December 2021 by Henning Jeschke, Leah Bonacera, and Melanie Gutmann, whereby Jeschke and Bonacera had previously taken part in actions by Extinction Rebellion and the hunger strike of the Last Generation. As far as I know, the activists of the Last Generation are financed by the very rich, to the tune of around €1,000 per month, as well as by persons who promote air pollution, atmospheric poisoning, and environmental pollution with their insane and stupid actions. This in order not to do the correct thing themselves, namely to 1. Personally adhere to what is necessary, and to do in an exemplary manner what must be one's duty, that everything and everyone is preserved and can exist in a manner compatible with nature, as well as that neither the environment is polluted, nor the atmosphere poisoned, and also no air pollution occurs. The apparently work-shy climate activists are paid by the wealthy with donations that also keep the organization alive. As far as I know, the main sponsor of the Last Generation is America. How could it be otherwise? With the U.S. organization Climate Emergency Fund and the rich pulling the strings and financing everything. This is particularly because they stick to roads with glue that emits poison gas, which escapes into the atmosphere, poisoning it, and also causing cancer. In addition, toxic gases are also released by acetone, which is used by the police and others together with a mixture of cooking oil to loosen the idiotically stuck people. The gases released may cause human beings to develop incurable cancer, as the PLIARN have clearly discovered in their investigations into the whole thing. The climate activists of the Last Generation thus promote air pollution and environmental pollution all the more, just as the dangerous gases emitted by the glue, which are obviously once again unknown to earthly science or cannot be detected, can cause many human beings to develop cancer, who may then die miserably. another climate activist organization, which is no better than the last generation, namely Fridays for Future, which works with strikes, protests, etc., and drives that part of humanity crazy, just like the last generation, which is only a believer, and is not able to think for itself, and is therefore nothing more than an obedient slave, like the climate activists themselves, of all the donating heavy rich, who can increase their wealth through their donations, which they give for a specific purpose. It makes you wonder how stupid many human beings are that they do not realize this, and also do not understand that with every donation to the climate organization, they are helping to ensure that destruction, annihilation, and extinction can spread all the more. The idea for Fridays for Future actually came from Swedish schoolgirl Greta Thunberg, who, at the age of 15, decided in August 2018 to skip school for 3 weeks and sit in front of the Swedish parliament with a school strike for the climate sign. With her school strikes, she wanted to ensure that Sweden honored the climate agreement that was reached in Paris. When she became a representative of the International Climate Protection Movement in 2019, she was honored with the Right Livelihood Award and became the youngest person ever to be named Person of the Year by US magazine Time. Since then, she has become financially sound and, according to Vermogen magazine, has a fortune of around 1 million euros. This clearly shows what is really behind climate activism and its demonstrations, namely that it is all about earning money and not about improving climate protection. As for climate activist Greta Thunberg, she is out of the picture because she shared a post on Instagram from a pro-Palestinian organization that has in the past disseminated a statement that can be understood as a call to wipe out Israel. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg not only shared a post on Instagram from a pro-Palestinian organization calling for a global strike against the genocide in Gaza. She thus endorsed the content of the corresponding page and Instagram story feature of Palestine Speaks. The whole thing was addressed to all workers, students, pupils, all businesses and citizens worldwide, with the call criticizing the state terror of many Western states is repressive and is directed against all those who show solidarity with the human beings in the Palestinian territories. That is why Greta Thunberg is now practically a member of the climate activists Fridays for Future, and also an outlaw in other respects. But now back to the slurry, because there is still a lot to say about this and everything else. So it is not only industry, households, pig fattening farms and agricultural businesses, along with many other small and large businesses and private businesses and hobby rooms, etc., that have had to start building wastewater treatment plants, that is to say sewage treatment plants, whereby the true background to the whole thing is still being concealed, let alone accepted, namely the ever-increasing overpopulation. And truly, all the evil of all the destruction, annihilation and extinction of the world's fauna and flora is and remains solely the fault of the massive overpopulation, which must be drastically reduced worldwide to a figure of just 500,000. And this must be achieved through logic, clear reason, authoritative rationality, and all-encompassing responsibility, that is to say, not through any form of violence, such as murder, manslaughter, war, terror, capital punishment, euthanasia, or suicide. Only logic, a clear mind, reason and responsibility for the existence of the planet. All ecosystems, nature, fauna and flora, which also includes human beings on Earth, are necessary and truly righteous in order to bring about everything in such a way that everything is normalized in the wisest possible way. However, this requires all-round responsible global leadership and enlightenment with regard to humanity, which can only be achieved by persons who are aware of their responsibilities and who are committed to absolute, honest, capable, good, and correct leadership of the people. This, as they are not concerned with selfishness and personal wealth, and also not with other advantages, so they are thoughtful rulers and know what has to be done. Only true logic, common sense, and clear reason, as well as responsibility, can bring about the correct thing, which lies solely in a worldwide and controlled birth stop, which must be implemented over many years and adhered to until the population level of only 500,000 human beings is reached as a result of the reduction. After that, it is important to ensure that this population remains constant for all time and never again brings destruction, annihilation, and extinction due to overpopulation. The phosphorus in manure from farms and pig fattening farms has largely disappeared, as laws have been passed that prohibit wild spreading, but there are still black sheep who circumvent official regulations. In addition, the problem of air pollution has not been solved, as the ammonia from manure is not only an atmospheric pollutant, but also produces almost 50% particulate matter. The ammonia emitted from the slurry, which comes from the soil, causes widespread pollution because it all goes into the air from the fields, meadows, and pastures, but that is not all. This is not because ammonia also escapes from the stables into the air and impregnates the atmosphere with it, in addition to the fact that the manure stinks miserably due to the chemical additives, and the stench spreads far and wide. The ammonia that escapes into the air reacts with CO2 exhaust gases from traffic and also from private businesses and industry. This creates a mixture of particulate matter, which is harmful to human health, and even causes cancer in many cases, as the Plejaren have discovered. Particulate matter consists of tiny particles which, when inhaled, lead to illness and many deaths. In particular, it also causes cancer, as the Plejaren have discovered. The ammonia emissions from manure also acidify the soil and over-acidify the flora, mainly causing great damage to the forests because the ammonia is spread through the air and rain across meadows, floodplains, fields, moors, reeds, swamps, etc., and also into the forests. Trees in particular show how they become ill. They lose their soil support because the root system atrophies as a result of the acidification of the soil, causing the trees to lose their root support and fall over during strong storms and winds. The serious consequences of the excessive spreading of manure in the open countryside, when the flora, that is to say the plants, can no longer absorb and cope with it, result from nitrogen entering the soil, which leads to a change that produces nitrates. These are salts that can be absorbed by the plants but seep into the groundwater, which in turn is harmful to the health of human beings on Earth if they drink this water. And this is exactly the case, because in many cases human beings are dependent on groundwater. In areas where there is a lot of arable farming, agriculture, and large-scale horticulture, the nitrate content for human beings is far exceeded, which leads to many diseases in human beings. For this reason, many drinking water wells cannot be used, or the groundwater has to be extremely diluted for consumption by human beings, on the one hand to make it drinkable, and on the other to make it less pathogenic, because nitrate in drinking water in particular is demonstrably very carcinogenic. Now, as far as I know, I would be happy to be instructed otherwise. There are no sanctions against manure spreaders in Switzerland or any other country, neither for agriculture nor for pig farms. This is despite the fact that Switzerland ranks third in Europe in terms of ammonia emissions. This is wise, although it should also be noted that much more ammonia escapes into the surrounding meadows, pastures, and fields when slurry is spread, in addition to nitrogen and other substances that are harmful to the soil and air and which nature cannot cope with. Ammonia emissions are a catastrophic killer of nature and, as Ta explained to me, an unparalleled health hazard. The resulting mixture of ammonia and CO2 exhaust gases creates particulate matter, as I said, which is inhaled by human beings, animals, wildlife, and all other self-propelled life forms, and is also absorbed by all flora. This has a particularly catastrophic effect on human beings, but also on animals and fauna, etc., but also on all flora, which the Earthling obviously does not care about because he does not care at all, or only cares about it. In the case of human beings, the inhalation of particulate matter increasingly impairs their breathing because various respiratory diseases occur, both internal and external. In the 1940s, Svath explained to me what is meant by internal and external respiration, stating that these are two very vital processes that regulate oxygen uptake and utilization on the one hand, and also carbon dioxide production and release on the other, in a joint process of internal and external respiration. It should be explained that external respiration is the actual process of breathing that originates outside the cells, with oxygen entering the blood from the air we breathe, while carbon dioxide is released from the blood back into the air we exhale. During the process of breathing, air is drawn in through the mouth or nose and transported into the lungs. In the lungs, the oxygen is then absorbed by the blood, which at the same time releases carbon dioxide, which is released back into the air we breathe. The use of oxygen by the body's cells is the actual internal respiration, which consumes the oxygen enriched in the blood to produce energy. In the process, the cells release carbon dioxide into the blood as waste, so to speak. External respiration is based on the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body's lungs. The oxygen-rich air we breathe is transported into the lungs when we inhale, for which the air enters the windpipe via the mouth, nose, and throat. Mucous membranes not only warm up the air that passes through, but also cleanse and moisturize it. However, the inhaled fine dust cannot simply be absorbed without causing harm, but triggers symptoms that can have very nasty consequences. That is actually, by and large, what I have to say or explain in this regard. Of course, I am not a trained doctor or medical professional, so I can only explain the whole thing as Svath explained it to me and what I remember. Of course, there is a lot more to it than that, but what I have said should be enough to understand. What is perhaps important to explain is that as a non-doctor and non-physician, I am not authorized to give medical advice, which is why I stay away from it. And what else needs to be said relates to the fact that internal respiration takes place within the cells. So there is cellular respiration, whereby the oxygen is utilized within the so-called mitochondria. What perhaps also needs to be said is that with regard to internal respiration, oxygen is utilized through a biochemical process to generate energy, etc. But now I have something to say again about manure, because it is still the case that the spreading of manure is based on the principle of voluntariness, but this should really be exercised in a responsible way, so that farmers, livestock breeders, and large livestock producers, as well as pig fatteners, etc., have to set themselves responsible limits with regard to the spreading of manure in the open air. Nobody, including farmers, pig farmers, and large-scale livestock producers, but also no poor or rich human beings, are above the laws of nature, so every human being must obey them. What else I want to say about everything else? Human beings should not eat so much meat, but should reduce their meat consumption to about 75 to 80% less than their previous consumption, that is to say, consumption, and so they should be careful to eat much less meat. This alone can reduce the global livestock population for meat production and the total number of farm animals. As a result, many more food crops can be grown for human beings, namely much more than just 35% of the total area of all fertile land, 65% of which is used solely for animal feed because earthlings eat meat in excess. No wise thought is given to the fact that animals and other creatures are also living beings. They want to be treated decently and enjoy living as much as human beings do. But when you think about the fact that an enormous number of earthlings only think about themselves and their own needs, desires and vices, and have nothing left for their neighbor, and certainly nothing for animals, wildlife, and the entire fauna and flora, then you shudder as a thinking human being. What good is it that some time ago the word food instead of feed was coined, which means eating instead of feeding? That is to say, planting and harvesting food for human beings, instead of planting food for animals and wildlife, etc., in order to then kill and eat them. Every earthling should really and truly think about this, instead of stupidly believing in a dear God or other stupid imbecility and imaginary figures. When thinking about meat, it is important to realize, recognize, and understand that it is not very energy efficient, in contrast to a wide variety of vegetables, herbs, fruits, mushrooms, and berries. The completely misguided meat eater, However, who eats mainly products of animal or animal origin, or fish, birds, or other living creatures, only eats a few vegetables, fruits, mushrooms, herbs, and other plants. And with that, I have actually said everything I wanted to say about this topic.
What you said and explained is very interesting and valuable to think about seriously, though. What you have spoken about is also something that we realized a long time ago, before we took up the events that are going on around you and which can be traced back to the religious energies that have been able to take possession of independence over the course of time. These have become self-acting, and in this wise they are able to influence the unreasonably large mass of Earth's humanity in such a way.
But all this is not fit to be said openly. What you have now said in these 25 minutes, as I see on the HRs, I think I will not call it up and simply leave it all out.
That may really be the case.
That will definitely evolve, just as artificial intelligence will also be programmed for murder, manslaughter, war, destruction, and wealth, and it will one day turn on Earthlings. But let us not talk about that. I wonder, though, how you behave towards foreigners.
We are in the Federation and act uniformly in it with regard to everything that arises. Consequently, we are careful in every way to exercise restraint with regard to the foreigners in every wise and to avoid any contact of any kind. We have nothing whatsoever to do with foreigners, and we have not wanted to have anything to do with them since time immemorial, nor do we want to have anything to do with them now or in the future. But now I should discuss with you what I came here for, and also what I mentioned.
So you act completely differently from the Earthlings, because even in parties different views of dissenters prevail. Consequently, these then simply overbill the others in such a way that they become of the same view and go along. Then just one more question. Overpopulation has destroyed everything to such an extent that the climate has also changed for the worse. What do you think the future will bring in this respect?
Very unpleasant things, but it is no longer possible for me to talk about them today because I have other things to discuss with you now. But I will say that the melting of the glaciers and poles will release ancient bacteria and viruses, which will also cause old diseases to emerge and lead to major problems.
Okay, then you can get on with what you have to say.